Okay, I'll call the special committee, the whole meeting to order. Mr. Shelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the additions and corrections, I'm going to ask the Treasurer to do that just prior to his presentation, so I think we could leave it until then. There are a couple of pages that were out of order in the documents that were circulated, and Mike can deal with that.
Okay, all righty, thank you. So are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Being none, then we'll go forward to the presentation. Mr. Mays.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'll start off by talking about the changes we made this morning. In preparing the budget, one of the projects that had to be deferred, which is coming back for reconsideration this afternoon, is the renovations at the Magnus Center. Inadvertently, we deferred the wrong project. We deferred one at the Magnus Center. They're both for $300,000. So we've given you revisions with the correct project being deferred. Does not change the recommendations, but in your report, it does change the table at the bottom of page 6, for which revisions will be sent out. Would you like me to go through those changes?
Yeah. Just to clarify again, please, Mike, what was deferred and what was not deferred?
The project that was supposed to have been deferred was project number. Sorry, I don't remember the project number. Anyway, it was the one on the Magnus Center, the renovations, for which were consideration is being given to building a fitness center. The project was a $300,000 project with financing from development charges and other sources. The information that was circulated showed that deferral, in fact, being a project at the RAID 20 complex, again for $300,000, of which $150,000 was to be financed from the asset replacement fund and $150,000 from others sources. We have recirculated Appendix B, which is my understanding was also put in reverse order in your package. Pages 11 to 14 were in reverse order. So we've given you revised copies of that appendix and of the presentation with the corrected numbers on it. The schedule on the bottom of page 6 shows on slide 8 of the presentation with the corrected numbers. But as just to reiterate, though, it does not change any recommendations, just some of the supporting information as provided in the report in the appendices.
So, Mike, is this revised Schedule C or revised Schedule B? I'm just trying to compare that to the one that was circulated.
The revised Schedule B is the one that was circulated this morning. Again, the total capital is the same. You'll find that the funding from the asset replacement fund is increased by $150,000. The funding from the development charges is decreased by $200,000, and the funding from other sources is increased by $50,000.
I'll sort it out as we go.
It sounds more complicated than it is. As I go through the presentation, I can speak to it. But the main thing is you've been given revised Schedule Bs, and I'll speak to the changes that are on page 6 when I go through the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shelton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to get us into the sequence of events, this is the Committee of the Whole meeting where we bring back the budget documents, the budget addressing all of the issues that Council has set out for us to deal with, meeting the target and so on, and the Treasurer is going to take us through that to set out how we have satisfied the various goals and objectives from the outset, and then also next steps which would lead to Council approval at the next Council meeting. So we'll keep it as brief as we can, and then if there are any questions from Council members or from the public, they could be asked relative to the budget, and we're looking for a motion then to move it forward to the Council meeting of next Monday. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Treasurer.
Thank you. Councillor Kerwin?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to either Mike or to Bob, where are we with the 4 firefighters as we go through this budget? And what is the recommendations of the JCC to both councils, both Aurora and Newmarket?
Mr. Shelton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that well, it's covered in the report itself, in the budget report, and will maybe be touched on as part of the presentation, but certainly will be part of tomorrow's JCC meeting.
Okay, so that will be handled at tomorrow's JCC meeting and brought to council then on the 18th?
I can't speak to when it will be brought back, Mr. Mayor, but when the routine JCC minutes come to council, whenever that is.
I think the process is that at this point, we would be looking at the funding envelope and how that funding envelope and how JCC employs that needs to be dealt with by JCC, and then that comes back to Aurora Council for approval and comes back to this council for approval.
Okay.
So that needs to.
So that will be in the future, in January or February, whenever, and there will be a recommendation from JCC then.
Yep.
Okay,
I think that's the normal process.
Okay, that's
as to
fine.
how
That's what I wanted to
so
know.
what,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Bob.
What we're establishing here is the funding envelope and the extent to which that would be contained in our budget. Councillor Sponga?
So, you're correct, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to add for Councillor Kerwin's information that on page 5 of 10 of the report, I think it's the 3rd paragraph, it deals with the fact that this item will be dealt with the trigger to move the funds from the municipal reserve into the JCC will be triggered by a decision of JCC, and I know there's a recommendation on tomorrow's JCC agenda to deal with this. I'm not sure what the timing would be, but I think the sooner the better in terms of a discussion at council whether that recommendation to move those funds should occur or not.
Just as we're going through the budget, I have another question, and that is with the...
Can we wait to get
Okay,
through the
yep,
presentation
yep.
then, Dave, and then we can have questions and clarification if we could? Okay, thank you. Okay, then go ahead.
That over the years, we've set aside reserves for an addition to the Economic Development Department, and I believe those reserves are about $300,000 right now. Where do we stand with additional staff for that department, which is the recommendation of the Chamber of Commerce? Can anyone tell me? Mr. Sheldon, Mr. Mays?
Mr. Shelton?
Mr. Mayor, that is referenced in a report that's on the agenda this afternoon relative to the marketing of the corridors. There is a recommendation that relates to specifically when staff would be in a position to bring a recommendation back to council relative to resources. There's, I think, 2 or 3 triggers to that, so that'll be dealt with this afternoon.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Mays.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council, my colleagues, and the public. It's been about a month since we had our last budget meeting, so I thought it was worthwhile to go through and reiterate where we're at and refresh everyone's memories. But as the CEO alluded, this will be a short presentation. So just to remind you, as part of the budget, we had some requirements that we wanted to aim to maintain the existing service levels, especially in the face of growth, to continue to deliver on council priorities, to stay within the initial target of 2.5%, excluding any adjustment to the asset replacement fund for the tax increase, while maintaining financial sustainability, balancing risk, and addressing budget drivers that have been carried forward. On December 7th, we focused on the operating budget. At that time, we were looking, we focused on the operating budget, and some adjustments were made at that meeting. One of the recommendations is to reduce the hiring requirements by $105,000. It was, at that time, it was pointed out to be one individual position. Those staff was given the option to choose what would be best, and they came back with the recommendation that it would be the Natural Heritage Coordinator would be the appropriate position to defer at this time. On the Central York Fire Services, there was a allocation. Newmarket's share of the growth was equivalent to a 0.28% tax increase. The direction was to reduce that to a 0.25% tax increase, which is the $15,921 you're looking at as a reduction, and to put the funding for the growth allocation into a town reserve. The town share of that is $131,902. So this has been ratified by council, so that recommendation would be carried forward, and those funds would be put into a town reserve. The library was asked to reduce this grant. It did so by implementing gapping in its budget, and that's a $10,000 reduction. And there's some other fine-tuning as well we did. Net result is we have savings of 0.25% of a tax increase. On December 7th, we were at a 2.43% tax increase. We've had the adjustments previously mentioned, plus an enhancement was reinstated to put $6,500 into outdoor skating rinks. And a decision was made to put the infrastructure levy at 0.8%. That puts us at a 2.99% tax increase at this point. Just want to just explain on the infrastructure. So we're looking at $424,583 being the contribution, the increase in contributions from the tax-supported budget. In addition, there's an increase of $488,395 in the water and wastewater, the rate-supported budgets, for a total increase in our contributions of $912,978, which puts our annual contributions for 2016 at just under $16 million. It'd be $15,959,408. The 2.99% town tax increase, when put on an all-in basis, and this is not taking into account any potential tax shifting, would be 2.35% tax increase. We have the region's tax increase at this time, and the school boards. Minor adjustments to Outlook. This was presented on December 7th. So the 2016 numbers are adjusted. These numbers are excluding any additional contributions for infrastructure levy. On December 14th, we reviewed the capital budget. At that time, it was sitting just over $26 million. There were proposals to add 2 projects. Those projects at the December 14th council meeting were deferred. The one being the Yonge Street, the trailway to Rita Avenue. Additional options are to be presented, and the other is the Magna Center Fitness Center. We referred to earlier as the adjustments, and that will be coming back this afternoon. As well, we gave various options on the program that was funded from the Asset Replacement Fund. Committee of the Whole, ratified by Council, took the option of a 0.80% tax increase for the Asset Replacement Fund levy, and what was considered at that time option B, which was to not dip into the opening balance on the Asset Replacement Fund reserves, but just use the new monies that are being put in. That was calculated to be a reduction of $714,450 to the program, and that change has been made. So the capital program at this point is $26,437,774. This next slide shows how it's being funded. This has been revised for the correction. So out of development charges, $7,447,050. This is $250,000 less than we had previously shown. The Asset Replacement Fund, $10,308 and $10,308,024, including an increase of $150,000 on the Asset Replacement Fund in the other. Total program sitting at $26,437,774. The funding of ARF for the capital program at $10,308,024, plus the funding that is required in the operating budget, equals $15,959,408, exactly equal to the contributions in 2016. The next steps is to look for budget recommendations, which will be forwarded to the council approval on January 18th. There will be subsequent reports coming in April to finalize the budget process, which is the reconciliation of the approved budget to financial statement presentation, i.e. in PSAB fashion. We'll have the 2015 carryovers, which have already fully funded. We'll be presenting a report on that. And with that information, we'll be able to finalize the reserve and reserve fund budget for 2016. And by June, we'll be doing the final tax billing, because we'll have the final rates. What we're waiting for is, obviously, for us to complete our budget so we can have our tax rates, as well as confirmation from the region on what their tax rates are and what the tax ratios will be, and from the school boards on whether or not they're going to have a change in their tax rates. And that's it.
Great. Thank you. The report, 2016-01, the joint report, I think covers in depth the extensive work that's gone into this, and so we're starting to turn the corner on a very important process, but I think it's important to recognize the amount of work that's gone into this and how well that's progressed going forward. Are there any questions of clarification on the presentation? And if not, then I can bring forward report 2016-01, which is our operating budget, operating and capital budgets. What we'll do then is bring that forward. We do have recommendations, and that has been captured in the presentation. Could I have a motion with respect to the recommendations, please? Councillor Hempin. Okay, Councillor Hempin, Councillor Sponga. Any discussions? Councillor Sponga? Yeah, the mover and the seconder, sorry. Go ahead, John. It's a new year.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, again, as you stated, there is a lot of work that has gone into this budget, and I think we set a very ambitious target, and we were able somewhat to meet it. Just on item 1B, I just wanted to, again, for clarification's sake, because I know this is an issue that arises regularly, is that $30,000 from the market for the Lower Main Street BIA. I wonder if the treasurer could briefly outline how those funds are being collected, and how what does it mean by self-funded?
Mr. Mays? Through you, Mr. Mayor. The funds are collected. We add an additional levy for the businesses within the BIA, so they see it on their tax bill. It's calculated based upon the assessment. And they present a budget as well, which can be up to $30,000. So in that sense, it's self-funded. They cannot go above the $30,000. They don't have the funds to do it unless they're going to dip into their own reserve. And if they go below the $30,000, the difference is put in it. So similar to the water, wastewater, or building, it is self-funded in that sense, that it has no impact on the overall tax-supported budget.
But just a clarification, it is taxed to the property owners as opposed to business tenants would be paying it indirectly through their rentals, I guess.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the clarification. Yes, it is on the property owner.
Thank you. Regional Councillor?
Thanks very much. Just wanted to make some comments about the budget. I think it's safe to say that there's no such thing as an easy budget process. It's always difficult and complex, and requires a lot of work on behalf of staff and council and the residents. And I want to say thank you to our staff for the work they've done on this budget and assisting council in landing where they want to, or where we're attempting to. I also want to say thank you to the public. The public were heavily engaged in this in various ways. We've gotten feedback from individuals and organizations, and they do a lot of the work too in providing us the kind of input and feedback we need to help us find that balance between trying to keep taxes low and also providing the kinds of services that people want. The one thing I would say is that I want to just highlight the fact that where we're landing here, 2.99% includes 0.8% for asset replacement fund. we were one of the earlier municipalities to start down the road of asset replacement, and we're continuing to create strong investments. And while that, isn't exciting in the short term for residents in terms of new services, it's putting this municipality in incredibly a good position for 5 and 10 and 30 years from now. And it's a great footing to go forward on. When you take that 0.8 away, our increase is 2.19%. And I also thought, I think it's worth highlighting that 2.19% is in a period which we dealt with some time ago, but this is in a period where we're beginning to, for the first year, beginning to set aside funds for a significant enhancement in fire services. So as you move towards a new fire station and the new employees for that station, we're setting aside money in a series of years to make sure that the impact isn't too great in 1 year, but to also make sure that we can provide that service a level that is required not only by the residents but by various best practices. And so that in of itself is at least just this year alone a 0.25% increase. That would mean that our tax increase is more in the 1.9% range when you take away asset replacement and you take away the enhanced fire service, which is something that comes up, isn't a regular budget occurrence. I think that's a very difficult in this environment number to land on, and I think we've done it, especially considering that we will continue to offer strong service to the town of Newmarket, enhanced services. And in that aspect, what I'd like to ask is, could we, for next week, for the budget approval, could we perhaps have a bit more of a list or a bit more of an exploration, and a list would probably be the best way, but of the kinds of services that will be flowing out of this budget, or capital or operating. I think we need to, I think it's important that we do what we do, which is focus on the bottom line, and we try to find savings over and over and over again, but at the same time, at the end of it, we're also investing. And there's a lot of good news stories within this budget, and I know we've done some of them in the past, but I really like to see us highlight that aspect more, and even in our communications after the budget is passed.
Sure.
Open for comment.
Mr. Sheldon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can certainly do that. That's something that is done as part of the press release, but in advance, it could be done for council. And it can speak to the components also in the budget that deal with financial sustainability, such as outright sizing of revenue that is included in the budget. So we could provide that list for members of council.
Thanks very much. So would like to see sort of a little bit more of a sharing of the investment that we're making and what it means to people in a really plain terms. I'd also like to make a request of the treasurer that for next week's budget, that the advertising line item in the budget is separated out for a separate vote, and I'll declare a conflict on that. We haven't had a discussion except for one that was produced through a deputant, and I did declare a conflict on that. But on the final budget, if we can just pull that out separately, as my wife works for Metroland Media, which does one of their 100 and roughly 20 papers does have a advertising budget here. So I just want to close by saying that. I have one question for Mr. Mays too, and just because of the previous discussion, I want to clarify this, but is it correct in my understanding that the dollars that are put into a reserve for future hires for Central York Fire Services, being a town reserve, that the process would be that Central York Fire Services would debate and discuss this, make recommendations, but the trigger for the release of those funds would be a vote of the town council?
Mr. Mays?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, any funds that are put into a town reserve, I would have to have council authority to be able to transfer to another use. So in that situation, you are correct. I would have to have council approval to be able to take those funds out of that reserve to apply it to that growth item.
Great, thank you. And if we can also include in the information that we're looking to compile about some of the advancements of the budget is the reduction of the capital budget, and it's working within its natural envelope. So I think that, those are my comments. I think also recognizing that the all-in tax rate of town, region, school board, or in other words, the increase that the residents of Newmarket, taxpayers of Newmarket will incur at their door or on their bill is 2.35%. Again, budgets are difficult, and we look to find those savings, but we also are very, very cautious and cognizant of maintaining the high level of services that the residents of Newmarket constantly tell members of council that they would like to see maintained. And so with that, I just want to say I support the budget and think it's a good basis to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sponga?
Yeah, I think Regional Councillor pointed out something very important in terms of the capital budget and some of the reductions that have been made to this budget. And I think it's important that we realize that I think it's the electronic version of page 8 of 10, very first paragraph at the top talks about the reduction on some of the project lists. And a lot of it has to do with, and I'm involved as a ward councillor to the extent that we see the need for some road rehabilitation and reconstruction, Millard, Park Avenue, Lauren Avenue, Queen Street, and etc. But because of sensitivity to some of the traffic impacts that we've seen with Metrolinx infrastructure replacements on Davis Drive and in the future on Yonge Street, that it would make sense to defer these projects. And the report speaks to seeking potential grants to assist with those projects in the future. But I think what a message that needs to be sent here to upper levels of government, especially the province, is that any time that these projects are being deferred at a lower tier municipal level, we are going to face considerable increases in the future associated with increased cost of labor and, of course, increased cost of petroleum-based and construction projects. So as I asked years ago, whether there is an opportunity when these large projects are being considered to include a buffer for lower municipalities to try to mitigate that impact in the future. I think it's something that needs to be considered, and perhaps it's something that could go forward as we deal with future large projects, projects of that scale in the municipality. So although we are deferring these projects, whether we like it or not, in the future, there is going to be an additional impact. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Councillor Bazans?
Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mays, for your presentation. I also just want to express my appreciation for the work that's gone into this. I know that when we met just before Christmas in December, we were looking at potentially a 2.5% increase with a further 1% for the asset replacement fund. So I know that there's a lot of consideration and work and prioritization that has to go into making decisions around what we keep, what we cut out in the budget, in a way that we're not going to be negatively impacting the enhancements that residents are looking for, but at the same time ensuring that we're being respectful and efficient with the tax dollars that we receive. So I know that there's a lot of consideration that goes into everything right down to specific line items in the operating budget, and it's not easy as someone who works in the not-for-profit organization and in sector rather, and has to constantly look at how we could drive even more efficiencies. I know what a tough job that is, and so I just want to acknowledge that work that's gone into it. I do have a question, though, with respect to the items that we've deferred, and perhaps just get some clarification on what happens if we decide then that we do want to go forward with those. Do we now wait until the 2017 budget, or do we then go back to reserves to look for funding for those things? I know that there's also some other projects that have been on the docket for several years that aren't necessarily reflected in here. So just for my own sort of clarification, understanding, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd appreciate sort of getting clarification on
Mr.
what
Mays?
happens with those.
Mr. Mays?
Very good question, Councillor. Well, anything that's deferred, I want to clarify that is, it just means the full statement is deferred for consideration next year, is what it is. It doesn't mean it automatically comes up in the following year. If council was to determine that they wanted to take one of these items, there's items on the capital budget, there's items in the decision packages that were deferred. They have many options. They could do a supplementary budget to in essence, to revise the 2016 budget to include them. They could direct approval of the expenditures for that and direct staff to find a way to pay for them within the existing budget or through the use of reserves. That would entail no adjustment to the budget, or as you stated, they could wait to 2017. Some of the factors to take into consideration would be the funding source and the amount. Some small items, it is possible that we could, as we go through the year, if there's some opportunities or change of priorities, that we could try to fit them within the existing budget. Some items, there may be applicable reserves that can be used. Some items may be fairly substantial. It would require reopening the budget, doing a supplementary budget, or deferring it to consideration in 2017. So it depends. You have many options. If you wish, we could talk about some of the things if you have some specifics in mind. But it would depend again on the whether it's operating capital, the funding source, and the amount.
Thank you.
Okay. Specifically, Mike, the two items that we've highlighted in your presentation, one is the Ritas Avenue Trail, and the other one is the Magna Center Fitness Center. And if I look at the deferred capital list, both of those items are being funded either by DCs or reserves and a small internal loan. So that wouldn't require us to pass a new capital budget. Those could be dealt with independently as the reports come forward, and that allocation and funding source would be defined or identified in the report itself. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, for those two items, I know one's coming back to committee hold this afternoon. If a decision was made on that, it still could be included with, we could revise the 2016 budget request to include that in it, because there's no tax impact. It'd be a fairly easy change to be made. And same on the other project, the Ritas Way one, if that was to happen in a timely fashion, we could still include in the 2016 budget because there's no tax impact. After January 18th, assuming we pass the budget on January 18th, Council would then have, on those items, they'd have the choice of either doing a supplementary budget, so adjusting the capital budget. We've done that. We haven't done that for a few years on the capital side, but it has been done in the past. Recently, we've done one where we wanted to add in an infrastructure levy. You could do that, and then the budget is formally changed, or you could just authorize use of those expenditures as there's no tax impact. My preference is the first one, where you actually change the budget, but Council has in the past sometimes authorized the expenditures outside of the budget process.
Thank you. Councillor Twinney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just to follow up on that, Mr. Mace, when you say a supplementary budget, but therefore there would not be, it's capital loans, and if those funds are coming out of DC's or asset replacement fund, there's going to be no impact on the tax. You're not looking like at an additional tax levy, are you? It wouldn't affect the taxpayers at all in that sense.
Mr. Mace?
Typically, if you're going to change the budget in such a way that has a tax impact, you definitely have to do a supplementary budget. It is the formal way to do that. From staff's point of view, though, even though reserves are established for it, we need the authorization to be able to spend that money. So we need either council direction, which could be outside of the budget process, or we need a supplementary budget to do so. Again, we have to be cautious that just because the money's in the reserve doesn't mean that the spending has been authorized unless it has been authorized.
Okay, so it could be, it's just basically getting authorization to use those funds, but it's not actually, we're not looking at doing, it wouldn't be an additional levy.
That's correct. If you look at the quarterly reports that we did on the capital in 2015, you'll see that we speak to the budget and additional capital expenditures that have been approved. There's a few examples of that in that report.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerwin?
Yes, just a comment, Mr. Mayor. This is, I guess, my 37th budget, and I salute the staff and the public, but also my colleagues. We did include one thing, and we phased it in, and that's sidewalk plowing, to pick up the 40% that we weren't doing before, and over the next 3 years, that will be completed, and I think we did it in a congenial way. As I say, we phased it in over 3 years. We didn't spring it on the public overnight. And I really thank staff and my colleagues and the public for the way we've handled a budget in a very difficult economic time, I must say. These budgets are becoming more difficult all the time, as we have no new greenfields coming in. It's basically all infill now. The last subdivision really is up in the Toth Farm, and that's already started. So it becomes more and more difficult for us to meet our objectives, and we're a very frugal council. So I thank all of you.
Thank you. Good. Well, I'd like to, as well, extend my appreciation to staff. I know it's been a challenge going forward, but as always, we've always found a solution that has been good for the taxpayer and good for the residents in terms of their service delivery expectation. So I'm very happy to support this budget because I think it captures the balance that we always try to seek, and that is tax rate fairness and at the same time the service level expectations. And so we've received a good message from our community in terms of what the expectations are, and I think the budget responds to that. So I extend my congratulations to staff and my appreciation for their hard work. So I will be supporting the budget. Being no further comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? Oh, you took your glasses off, or was that a vote? Okay. That is carried. There being no other items, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Vague, Councillor Broom Plumley, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.